All right, you guys are all on time, so we get to start on time. How's that sound?
Good idea.
You guys are the brave ones right in front here. Right in the splatter zone, the spit zone.
The spit zone?
I talk too fast.
Okay.
So,
I get it.
yeah, slow, right?
I'm sure I want it.
There you go. So today we have a kind of a newer topic. It's kind of a little bit of a buzzword that's been out here for a while. And the topic tonight is fat for fuel, a revolutionary diet to combat cancer, boost brain power, and increase your energy. So the book that I wrote probably 7-8 years ago is called The Power of Wellness. And the sheet you have in front of you is some stuff out of this book. So you're welcome to use that to write on the back if you'd like. But this book right here, I would tell you, is more Nutrition 101. And what this is going to talk about in here is the basics that we've all heard a lot of before. So here you go. Yeah, you grab one of those. Don't have too many of them. Here you go. You have to go back here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here's a book right on in the back of the book or something.
There's two there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And right in the back of the book if you need to.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. You bet. Where was that? So yeah, this is more Nutrition 101, right? So it's the basics. So tonight we're going to talk about something that truly is revolutionary. It means we talk to most of your medical providers or a lot of the literature out there. It's really cutting edge stuff. So I've been a chiropractor for 20-ish years. I wrote this book 8-ish years ago, and it's currently being republished with this information in there because it's not in here. That's how new it is. So this process we're going to talk about tonight has really revolutionized my health. I've been kind of on this path for probably 25, 30 years of being a health nut and nutrition and exercise and diet. And I started this just about a year ago, and it truly revolutionized my health. My story is that I didn't do this because I wanted to lose weight. I think I need to lose weight. But by doing this, I lost about 10, 15 pounds, a lot better energy, feel a lot better, brain works a lot better, all these good side effects of the diet. So we're going to get into those here in just a minute and talk about that. As a culture, we've been a fat-free society since the late 70s, early 80s, right? Fat's bad. We all agree about that. So what's happened in the last 30 years? Have we gotten skinnier or fatter?
Bigger and better.
Bigger and bigger and bigger, yeah. Every state in the union now is considered obese as a society. So as a country, 55 to 60% of us are classified as obese. So BMIs keep rising, cholesterols keep rising, high blood pressure keeps rising, chronic degenerative diseases keep rising, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's keep rising. Cancer is out of control. They say 1 in 2 of us will die of cancer now. So it's impressive what these problems are happening, and they're all related to our diet. So garbage in, garbage out, right? So we're going to get into a few of these things. The rules of engagement tonight, if you have questions, holler them out. We'll be here tonight to answer them. I want to try to keep this around an hour. So if we get on too much of a tangent, I might ask to save that till the end. We'll do that one-on-one. But if you have some questions as we're going, let me know. If I talk too fast, assured that I'll just start talking faster again. So just tell me to slow down, okay? So there's two ways that our bodies can run on, right? We have the ability to have a dual fuel source. One fuel source is carbohydrates, and one fuel source is fat. So we get to have the choice of what kind of fuel source we want to run on. So most of us, I would say 99% of Americans only run on one fuel source called carbohydrates, right? And what's the food industry has conditioned us to eat how many times a day, would you guys say?
6.
Yeah, try to eat every 3 hours, right? Keep your blood sugars level, right? So that's a really big myth, because the only way our bodies are ever going to learn how to run on fat is to get rid of one hormone. So weight gain and being obese is truly a hormone issue. And the hormone that fights us is insulin. So if we have insulin in our body will never burn fat. So until we get insulin out of the way, our body's going to consistently use carbohydrates. And give me a scenario of what somebody eats for breakfast. Anybody eat cereal in here? Like a grain-based cereal? Yeah. So if you eat that grain-based cereal, say 7:30, 8 in the morning, by 10 o'clock, do you feel really good, or do you feel like you're pretty dang hungry? Yeah, you're bonking, right? Because what happens, insulin's so powerful, it's going to go out and it's going to gobble all those sugars up, and it does such a good job of it that it brings it below the set point, and your body bonks. So you have those massive food cravings all the time because your body's consistently screaming for carbohydrates.
This all makes perfect sense. I've done a better job than I've ever done in my life of controlling my diabetes the last month, and in that last month I've gained 10 pounds.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable battle.
Yeah, with the insulin
So
too.
how do you battle that? I have to have insulin to
Yeah.
stay alive.
We're gonna get there.
Okay.
Yeah, so stay with me. So yeah, that's absolutely what needs to happen. We need to put insulin away so then our body has the ability to get to that dual fuel source. So the big food companies in our country, the Monsantos, the Cargills, those types of folks, they condition us, right? You need to eat every 3 hours. Keep your blood sugars level. Because who stands to win in that deal? Big food companies. You got it. So if we look on here, on this side over here, this is what we call glycogen. So our body is pretty unique. God makes a pretty cool organism here. That when we eat sugar, our body can only have about 2 teaspoons of free sugar floating around our body, right? After that, our body's got to store it. So number one, what it stores it as is glycogen. And it stores us in this glycogen tank right here. And it can only store about 2,000 kcals of energy as glycogen. The rest of the excess glycogen gets stored as what? You got it, exactly. So our body moves it over to fat, right? So it just can only store a little bit of free sugar, so we have that burst of energy, the rest gets stored as fat. Now, we all have this other big fuel tank over here. It's called your fat. And most of us have about 40,000 kcals of energy in stored fat, right? So which one would you rather have access to, the 2,000 kcals of energy or 40,000 kcals of
I'm
energy?
in favor of sugar.
You what?
I definitely have to go with the 2000.
Well, we want to have access to more, right?
We
So
want
the more,
more.
so if we're to go out today and exercise, if we're going to go run 5 miles today, would you like a little tiny fuel tank or a great big fuel tank? Yeah. So the great big fuel tank we need to get access to. The problem is our bodies aren't trained on how to access that fuel tank. Okay? So everybody's writing feverishly, which is awesome, which is great. I will email you these slides, so everything on the slides will get emailed to you when we're done here. So if you want that, that'll all be with you. So, okay? So here's some benefits to why are we even here today? Why would we even talk about doing this? And again, the first thing I would tell you is that being in a ketogenic state, and a ketogenic diet, is something that needs to be taken seriously, and it's not something that you can just kind of dabble with and try for a couple days, because there's some certain things that's going to just kick us right out of this ketogenic state.
Did you say ketogenic?
Ketogenic, yeah.
Ketogenic.
So that's the ketone diet. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yes, so I'm sorry. So the ketogenic diet. So there is all the benefits lie on the other side of the passage of pain, which is most things in life. So some benefits is that you're going to have way more energy. Your body's going to have access to all this energy. This fuel tank over here is like biodiesel, right? Biodiesel's clean, it's efficient, great gas mileage, lots of horsepower. That's the fat storage. That's the ketones. And fat and ketones are synonymous when I say those two words. So the way your body breaks down fat and uses in your body is called ketones. Less brain fog. Who has a little bit of brain fog once in a while? Feel like the brain's not quite right? Yeah, not quite. So there's a book out there called The Grain Brain. So grain is pure sugar, and it gives us grain brain. Our brains don't work properly on pure sugar. So with that dual fuel source, our brains work twice as efficient running on ketones as they do on carbohydrates. Long periods without eating and not being hungry. Who would like to have some of that? Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we're going to talk about fasting here in a minute, in just a minute. But like for me, I haven't eaten since I had a salad at about 11 today. Not hungry at all. Not going to pass out. My body's running on the 40,000 kcals. It's got access to it. There's no bonking going on. Weight loss. Who wants a little weight loss? Yeah, that's always good, right? So truly, our body has the ability to eat its own body fat if we train it to access the 40,000 kcals, right? The biodiesel is right here. That's where it's at. So at first, what our bodies are going to do is it's going to consume that fat, and then we're going to feed it to run on fat so it stays efficiently running on fat. Okay? Prevents cancer and neurodegenerative diseases. Is anybody here had cancer or know somebody who has had cancer? Right? Yeah, everybody? So the research is impeccable on the animal studies. There's not a lot of human clinical studies yet. But think of it this way, if anybody's had cancer before or knows somebody's had cancer, they've done a PET scan. Has So you may have heard of a PET scan before, right? So anybody want to, layman's terms, tell me what they do in a PET scan? Stick in a tube, right? So an MRI tube, and they inject your body with a dye. And it's a sugar dye that has radioactive nucleotides attached to it. And then after it sits in your body for an hour, it gets circulated through your whole body, they scan your body. So it's sugar juice getting injected in your spine. And then the scan will show hot spots on the areas where the sugar goes to, right? For a cancer scan. So there's only one fuel source that cancer cells can run on. Guess which one that is? Sugar. So we can literally either preventatively or therapeutically starve cancer cells. So by taking sugar out of the equation, cancer cells have no ability to run on ketones. They're fundamentally flawed. Normal healthy cells have the ability to run on both of those. So we can starve one and feed the other. And we can do that preventatively throughout our whole lifetime, so we're going to have to deal with cancer. But if we have had cancer in the past, or if we are currently know somebody who does have cancer, a ketogenic diet is the baseline, the cornerstone of everything that we do. Okay? Builds your body up, doesn't tear it down. Chemo wrecks our health. It destroys our immune system. It's essentially a product that was developed from Agent Orange. We know how toxic that is. That's what chemo is. Chemo can't even be put in the landfill. It's so toxic. So if we want to do something a little bit different, this is an amazing thing to do. Neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's, all of those types of things. Our brain fog just continually gets worse until it doesn't function properly because of all of the inflammation in our brain. So to change the fuel source of a biodiesel that's very clean, very efficient, our brains work twice as good. Less ROS, big fancy word. Everybody heard of free radicals, right? So we all take antioxidants to prevent free radicals. So think of it this way again, it's biodiesel. Which runs cleaner, biodiesel or the old diesel from 1970, right? The new Volvo, I mean, we know that there's less emissions over here, runs cleaner, runs more efficient. That's what ketones do. In our body, they're called reactive oxygen species, and they're what basically cause accelerated aging, all the bad stuff that happens to our cells, increased cellular death. So by running on ketones, we have less reactive oxygen species. Fountain of youth. So because of these free radicals, our cells replicate twice as fast. So if you're eating sugars, your body's cells are replicating very fast. And think of it this way, the Xerox copy. So every time our cell has to divide, it's making a copy of the DNA. The next cell's making a copy of the DNA. The next cell's the copy of the copy. We only have so many of those in our lives that we can have copies of the copies before we get this sheet of paper. It's like, what's even on here? Nobody can even read it anymore. And when that happens, we have death. So if we can slow that process down by giving your body biodiesel as opposed to sugar, slows the xeroxing down. Helps your DNA last longer. Okay? So how do we become keto adapted, right? So right now, most of us in this room, our bodies don't want to run on fat because they've been running on sugar for 30 years. So we have to teach our bodies how we run on fat versus running on sugar. So there's two ways to go about this. There's the fast and furious way, or there's the slow and steady. Now, the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight is mainly the fast and furious, because I really believe we have to, that the best and most efficient way for us to do this is by incorporating a little bit of fasting into our bodies, okay, or into our diet, I should say. So we're going to go over a couple of these concepts. So, anybody heard of fasting before? Right? Yeah. Anybody ever heard of starvation before? Yeah. Who wants to be starved? Raise your hand. I don't need it. So there's a big difference. Everybody's confused on this. So fasting is something that you choose to do. You willingly choose to fast, and at any time that you want, you can willingly stop fasting, right? Starvation is something that's done to us. You know, whenever, every time we talk about fasting, everybody thinks of, you know, concentration camps or third world countries. But those people don't choose to fast, they're starving. So big distinction there, okay? So when we talk about this, I'm not here to really talk about religion, but biblically, we're called to fast. And on most spiritual aspects of our lives, no matter which denomination we are, most religions talk in some degree about fasting. So Catholicism talks about fasting, especially during a Lenten season. We're called to fast. We're called to have no more than one meal in a 24-hour period on Fridays during Lent and on Ash Wednesday. So it's a big part of my religion. Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. So if we look at this and take it out of our context, it's something that's normal for us. It's not something you should be afraid of or scared of. Fasting is something we can do to ourselves and we can stop at any time. So why do we fast? Why do we even think about fasting, right? So we talk about becoming keto adapted, and how do we get there is the question. So what's the hormone that we got to get rid of? Insulin, right? So anytime you put food in your mouth, no matter what it is, what hormone does your body put out? Insulin. So what would be the fastest way to get rid of that hormone? Stop putting things in your mouth, right? It's pretty simple. If you want to lose weight, what's the best way to do it? Stop putting things in your mouth, right? But we're so conditioned to a couple of these dogmatic myths that say, well, geez, once I start eating, I'll eat twice as much, right? Or my body will go into starvation mode and I'll start eating my muscles and not my fat. So a lot of those things are just dogmatic myths that have been portrayed for years. I was the biggest portrayer of them for 15 years. I thought you had to eat every 3 hours, keep your blood sugars level. So when your blood sugars are level, insulin is the guy doing that. And as he's keeping it level, your body's never getting into the fat stores. So my analogy up here is the freezer and the fridge and the freezer. We've got a freezer out in the garage somewhere or in the basement, right? Big deep freeze. Can't find nothing. It's stuck in the bottom for 20 years, right? It's hard to get to it, right? It's never right in your kitchen. It's always somewhere. Half the stuff's rotten, and you never get to it, right? So here's the analogy that the fridge on the left here, that's your 2,000 kcals. That's your glycogen stores, right? Everybody's got a fridge in their kitchen, right? Pretty easy to get to. Be a snack, open it up, grab something, away you go. That's glycogen. Quick energy, right now, ready to go. Glycogen gives you that hit right away. But when it's gone, you're about ready to kill somebody. You're bonking, right? We talked about the cereal at 8 a.m. By 10 a.m. you're bonking. You're wiped out, and you know what? It's real. It's like, I need food now. Look out, get out of my way, I need something. So those cravings are real because your body doesn't know how to run on fat. It's not keto adapted. So what we have to do first is we have to get the fridge emptied out. So if you go home Saturday or you're on vacation, you come home, there's nothing in your fridge, what do you normally do then if you want to cook something? Go out in the freezer, grab some meat, start to unthaw it. It's a process. It's a process. But that's where the 50,000 kcals lie. Those are our fat stores. Okay? So by doing some fasting, it's going to clean the refrigerator out. It's going to get rid of the glycogen, and your body then is forced to go looking for some ketones, and it's going to get those from fat. Okay? So everything I do when I talk about nutrition, I think of what did our Paleolithical ancestors, what did the Plains Indians of South Dakota do 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, right? Do you think the Plains Indians of South Dakota had a lot of fresh vegetables and grain and bread stored in February? No. Do you think there was probably pretty lean February and March on the plains out here? Do you think there was probably some times where they had to fast? Right? Do you think they were all keto adapted? They all had the ability to access the fuel tank? Because they went to survive. The men in those days would go out and hunt, and there'd be several days that you'd hunt the buffalo where you weren't eating very much as you were hunting the buffalo. And if you weren't able to hunt the buffalo, you're going to die. So genetically, our brains and everything in our body is genetically designed to run on ketones. If not, as a species, we would never survive. Bread, agriculture, processed grains, been around for 10,000 years. As a species, we've been around for millions of years. So our Paleolithical ancestors never had access to grain or very much fruit. When it was in season time, when the buffalo were harvested and when the berries were ripe, they got fat. They ate a whole bunch. They feasted, right? We have a feast time in life and we have a fast time in life. So the thing is, nobody likes to talk about the fast time because in our society, do we do more fasting or more feasting?
Feasting.
Because we have food everywhere, right? You leave here tonight, you're gonna pass 15 restaurants on your way home. The Plains Indians never had the ability to pass through fast food alley, right? There were some times where they had to feast, or fast. So we're gonna talk about this. There's a couple of ways that we can do this. I'm gonna make this really easy. It sounds scary, doesn't it? Fasting, sounds kind of scary. So there's a couple ways. So if you're somebody who's a sick puppy, which means you might have somebody that knows that they're struggling with cancer, they do have some Alzheimer's disease, they have some things that are really serious going on, you can do a several-day water fast, right? When I say several days, somewhere between 3 to 7 days where you're not eating anything except for drinking water, okay? Now, the one thing that we have to understand that when we start losing glycogen, when that starts burning off, our bodies are gonna lose a lot of sodium. So the one thing you wanna do to replace in your body when you're doing some fasting is sodium. You wanna stay really hydrated, half of your body weight in ounces of water, and we wanna replace some electrolytes with some sodium and some salt. So you can get some pink Himalayan salt, a little bit of bone broth, all things you can find just down at Staple & Spice, real basic, okay? So you can do it between 3 to 7 to 12 days. I don't recommend going much longer than that, but somewhere in that time frame based on how sick you are. I've done a 3-day fast. It's really simple once you become keto adapted. Okay, but just make sure you're staying hydrated. The one that we're going to talk about mainly tonight is what we call intermittent fasting. Okay, so this is what Monday through Friday, this is what I do. You want to make sure you stop eating 3 hours before you go to bed. So eat your dinner a little bit early if you can, and before you go to bed, 3 hours of fasting. Everybody's heard that, right? Don't snack at night, have it in front of the TV. We've all heard that. That's very, very true. So if we start our fast at, let's say, 7 p.m., and we don't eat until 7 a.m., 12-hour fast, right? And the research shows us it takes about 14 to 16, maybe 18 hours based on how healthy we are to burn through that glycogen store. So just by not eating before you go to bed and not eating around until 7 a.m., we got a 12-hour fast. And you slept through the whole thing. Easy so far, right? And then in the morning, what we do is just push breakfast back. So for me, I don't eat breakfast Monday through Friday, and my first meal is lunch. So 7 to 7, 12-hour fast. We throw a few more hours on there. We're at between a 14 to 15, 16-hour fast every day for me, Monday through Friday. Because that's the fast cycle, okay? That's what we call intermittent fasting. Very easy to incorporate. Shut your mouth before you go to bed and push breakfast back. And when you're starting with it, maybe you eat breakfast at 7:30. So you got a 12.5-hour fast. Or maybe it's, we go till 8 o'clock. Or maybe it's 9 or 10. So it's one of those things, again, fasting, you get to choose when you break the fast.
Can you drink water during
Yeah,
that 3 hours?
absolutely. Yeah, so we want to be drinking and hydrating the whole time. Okay? So those are the two types of fast. Water fast can be 3 to 7 days. Intermittent fasting is just that 15-hour fast, which is basically a skip breakfast. Those are two ways to go about it. Now, if we get that 14-hour fast, which hormone's gone?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Could you go back to what you just said? Water fast is?
Water fast is like 3 to 7 days. And then intermittent fast is 14 to 16 hours. And if we do that intermittent fast, which hormone do we get rid of? Insulin, yeah, you got it. And if insulin's gone and not in play, and your body's hungry, what's it gonna go look for? Fat. It's gonna go up in the deep freeze. Fridge is empty, now we're going to look in the deep freeze, okay? The problem is, the first 1 to 2 weeks of this, your body doesn't wanna go to the deep freeze. It's a long ways out, it's cold, gotta de-thaw the meat, doesn't wanna go out in the deep freeze, right? So, yeah, easier stuff right in the fridge, right? You got hidden stuff in the pill. So it's gonna take us a little time for our body to become keto adapted, and sometimes we have that passage of pain, and it's called the keto flu. Yep.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you experience hypoglycemia? As
Say that again?
what if you experience hypoglycemia pretty
Yeah.
easily?
And you'll get, that's what we're gonna talk about next.
Okay.
So that's what we call the keto flu.
Okay.
So the reason why we experience, for most people, the reason why we experience hypoglycemia is because it's real. Your body has no sugar and it needs to eat. Because we've never trained our body that there's a better way. So there's the passage of pain, and on the other side of that is where all the goodies lie. But it's what we call the keto flu. So what are some symptoms of the flu? I guess we're not throwing up. So this is more on the lines of feeling a little light, yeah, headache, lightheaded, a little nauseous, little body aches, more of that stuff, right? And based on how much good fats you've been eating over the last 20, 30 years will dictate how hard it is for your body to go through this keto flu. It's really not that bad, but it usually starts within 24, 48, maybe 72 hours of doing some fasting, right? Because again, there's no insulin there and your body doesn't yet know how to run on ketones. They've done it for so long. So we got to kind of push through that a little bit. So you want to have your mind right when you're going to do this. You want to make sure you've got some time where you can maybe not be working so strenuous, not traveling, things like that, where you can just be and really get this dialed in. But within 48, 72 hours, usually we're past that and your body now knows how to run on ketones. And now we're just going to lock that in for our body. We're going to train it to make sure it keeps knowing how to do that. So we want to be really strict for that first 1 to 3 weeks so our body really understands how to run on ketones. Because once it knows how to run on ketones, it gets muscle memory. So the next time you go a little bit without food, you don't have any keto flu. It's just like, oh, I got to run on ketones now? Good, switch over. Biodiesel on, carbohydrates off. So our body learns how to do it and remembers how to do it. So some of these we talked about here, make sure you're staying hydrated, make sure you're replacing some sodium. And again, I say 1 to 2 weeks, but give yourself, 2 to 4 weeks would be more ideal to really get your body dialed in on this. Okay? And then what we want to make sure is, and then fasting blood sugars, when you wake up in the morning and you're fasting, it should be under 80, but under 100 for sure. Okay? If we get those sugars gone, insulin's gone. Then our body's going to look for fat. So the next thing we always got to do too is we want to make sure that we're in a state of ketosis. So only things that are measurable can be tracked. So we want to make sure we track to see what our ketone levels in our body, what they are. So up here we have these urine strips, very inaccurate, but at the start of it you can show a few ketones in there, but they're not the right ketones we want to measure. We want to measure the beta butyrate, and that doesn't measure that. So, and I'm just going to bring it out here to show you, so I'll show you what we're done here, but this is just a little blood strip, a little tester. You can get it down at like a Walgreens, or you can order them online. So the unit's cheap, it's like 20, 30 bucks. The little strips are kind of expensive. They're around $2-ish, where the blood sugar ones are probably cents, 10, 15 cents or something like that.
So as you're monitoring yourself, this is what you would use.
Yeah, so if you're starting a little bit of fasting, by the third day you want to be kind of checking some ketones. The one I don't have a picture up on here yet though is what we call the Ketonics, which is a breathalyzer one. So you just go online and order that. It's about $200, so it's a little bit more expensive to start with, but you don't pay $2 every time you're testing. And you don't have to be a sissy like me and be screaming to get your little finger pricked. So.
Yeah, can you tell us what that looks like?
And-
The blood sugar machine, excuse me.
It is, yep. It's the exact same machine. You just switch it between the strips. So you can either use the blood sugar strip or you can use the ketone strip. Yeah, and when you put the strip in, it just it knows it's measuring ketones, and you just do a little prick and dip it in. Yep. We want to get your ketones between 0.3 to 3 millimolars, and there's no right or wrong. As long as we're at least 0.3, 0.4, you're in a state of ketosis. It doesn't matter if you're not better if you're at 3 versus 0.3. We just want to make sure we get there.
Okay, you said you're a ketosis.
0.3 to 3 millimolars. That'll be on the slide they send you to on that slide.
Okay.
So here is, oops.
Excuse me.
Yep.
You said something about what you're really wanting to measure is the beta butyrate?
Yep.
What's that?
Just there's different types of ketones in our body. That's the
Okay.
one that we want to measure.
And so these strips that you showed, they don't measure beta butyrate?
No, they do.
They
Those ones
do.
we want to measure, yeah.
Okay.
I say the urine strips don't.
Oh, okay.
So you get some urine strips which are very insensitive, so we don't recommend using those.
So the urine strips don't, but the ketone strips do?
Yeah, the blood ones do.
The blood
The blood
ketone.
ketone strips. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So part of my slide kind of got cut off here. It had all the macronutrients on there. So here's what we have to understand. So if we incorporate a little fasting like we just talked about, the 12-hour or the 14-hour fast, we're skipping breakfast, right? 3 hours before you go to bed, we push breakfast back a little bit. What does the rest of our food look like? So what's our macronutrient profile look like? So what we want to do, and I apologize for my slide, but usually they're on the top here, so I'm not sure what happened there. But we want to have our fat, this big bottom part here, this is our fat. So 75 to 80% of our diet should be fat. The other part right here, the next biggest piece of the pie, is protein, about 20%, 20-25% protein. The small little sliver, carbohydrates. Okay, so this is a high fat diet, low carbohydrate diet, moderate protein,
How much carbs did you say?
5%. Protein is 20-25%, and
So-
fat about 75%.
So when you're talking about carbs, you're talking about all carbs.
Well, let me get there one sec.
Okay.
Hang on, and I'll explain that one to you. Oh, there it is. Hey, I had it on there. So those are your macronutrient profiles. So we're gonna get into nuts and bolts a little bit here to answer your question. So protein, right? Everybody heard of the Atkins diet? Right? Anybody tried the Atkins diet? Yeah. So the Dr. Atkins, medical doctor, he was really close to having this right. He was really close. The distinctions he didn't get was that he didn't talk about what kinds of fats to eat, good quality, clean fats, and he didn't talk about the amount of protein that you can eat. So if we eat too much protein, our body converts that protein into sugar, a process called gluconeogenesis. So you eat that 12-ounce steak when you go home tonight, your body's going to take most of that and convert it into sugar. Kicks us out of ketosis. Okay?
We can eat steak for lunch, though, right?
You absolutely can. We're just going to talk about the quantities of it. Yeah. So to make this real easy, before I get into the stuff that's going to confuse you, you want to have about 12 to 15 grams of protein per serving max. And to make that even more real for you, a deck of cards is just a little bit too much, right? So around just a little less than a deck of cards worth of protein source with each of your meals. We get more than that, we get the meat this big, it's going to get converted into sugars in our body.
How many times a day do you do the 15 to?
If we're doing intermittent fasting, I do it twice a day, a lunch and a dinner. Now we talked about doing it slow and steady. If we want to do this process slow and steady, you can have a little bit for breakfast as well. And then we're going to talk about the weekends here. The fun stuff will be yet to come. So this is the formula. Again, this will be emailed to you, so don't get bogged down in this, okay? Before I show you this formula, I'm going to show you this. So this is to estimate your body fat percentage, okay? And they always have my picture up here.
Yeah.
You guys are still awake, I love it. So this right here is for you to look at this, look at the mirror yourself, and then you look up here and say, you know what, I'm probably in the range of 20% body fat, whatever it might be. Right? So we want to go online. So this is kind of just a way to estimate what percentage of your body is lean muscle mass versus body fat. Okay? So now if we use that and we go back into this formula here, the formula for protein, and let me get this email to you, 1 gram of protein for every kilogram of lean body mass. So if you take a 150-pound man that had 20% body fat, that would equal 68 kilograms times 0.20, 20% fat, would equal 13.6 grams of fat. So 68 minus 13.6 is going to give you 54 grams of lean body mass. Okay, so we want to find out how much of your body is lean body mass. So if we look at this is similar to my numbers. So 56 or 54 grams of lean body mass can equal 54 grams of protein. So for me, my ratio in a day is right around 50 grams of protein. And for most of us, somewhere between 40 to 70 grams of protein daily is about what you need. Again, to make this simpler, each meal around a deck of cards. Okay? So just don't get overkill in the protein, because as soon as we talk about replacing carbohydrate calories, what do we all think of for calories? Steak,
Yeah.
chicken, burgers, brats. So we can't replace our calories from carbohydrates with protein. We have to replace those carbohydrates with fat. That's our macronutrient profile being the ketogenic state.
Did you say that 3 times a day? Was that carb? deck of cards
Yeah,
on that?
2 to 3 times.
Two to three times
Yeah,
a
2 to
day.
3 times. Basically,
So
if you're
that'd be
gonna-
like a 6-ounce steak, what is
You
a
got it.
6-ounce steak
right around
compared
that.
to?
12 grams. of
12
protein.
grams?
Yep, so it's perfect. You got it. So when you're at the restaurant or something, you order a 6-ounce sirloin, you know,
Yeah,
it's yay, and it's yay. And then you have your veggies with your good quality fats on top of that. We're gonna talk
what about potato, how does that
Yeah,
work in
it
there?
doesn't.
That doesn't work into that?
Nope, that works into carbohydrate and the
That's
bad kind of
carbo-
carbohydrate.
okay.
Yeah, you got it. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. It will work.
You go in the same direction I'm from Nebraska, man, we eat
Yeah.
meat and potatoes.
I mean, meat potatoes, that's our
Yeah,
basic,
we're-
yeah.
You'll get some. I'm not getting them forever for you, okay? I'll give you some. All right, so carbs, now we're on to the carbs. So your carbs need to be, these are just kind of, I want to make this real for you so you kind of have some ratios and some numbers. Carbs are under 50 grams of net carbs per day. Okay, so a net carb is total carbohydrate minus fiber. Really simple. On the back of every label, it'll show total carbs and it'll show fiber. Okay? So white bread. How much fiber do you think's in white bread? 0. Straight sugar. Yogurt, probably, I'm just guessing, most of them out there, 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates in a little thing of yogurt. It's like one thing of yogurt, your carbs are done for the day, right? One piece of bread, carbs are done for the day. One white tater, carbs are gone for the day. And as soon as there's a bunch of carbs around, what molecule comes out, which hormone comes out?
Insulin.
Insulin. And if insulin there, what don't we use for fuel? Got it. Okay, so if you're gonna eat the carbohydrates, insulin's gonna be the player. And insulin's gotta go get those sugars, because we can only have 2 teaspoons of sugar in our body at a time. So we eat the potato, we eat the bread, we eat the cereal, we eat the grain, insulin comes to play. If insulin's at the party, we're not losing weight. Okay, so that's why we gotta clear it.
So, if we have more than 2 teaspoons in the body at one time, it does what?
It gets stored, number 1 is glycogen,
Okay,
and then number 2 gets stored as fat.
where's it stored as glycogen?
In your liver, to start with, it's bioavailable. In your muscle locally, a little bit in your muscles, not much. Okay? So essentially, we talk about carbohydrates. If it grows above the ground and it's green and leafy, have at it. If it grows below the ground, taters, carrots, beets, radishes, those types of things, very sugar, very dense, very sugary. Okay? So romaine lettuce, asparagus, kale, broccoli, zucchini, cabbage, all of those things that grow above the ground is going to be a cornerstone of our veggies and our carbohydrates.
I
Let me know
always
what-
thought corn was turned to sugar.
Corn sugar, yeah. So that's yeah.
That's above the
It
ground.
grows above the ground, but it's not green leafy. It's yellow and yucky. That's good. Thanks for the distinction of the I should quantify. Yeah, so
Well,
sugar.
it's green insulated.
Yeah, but it's just pure sugar.
Yeah, August is really good.
So where do they make the most of all the sugar at in America? Where does all the sugar come from?
Cornstarch.
Yeah, it's in every soda we have is high fructose corn syrup. So yeah.
So does
So-
it have to be green?
No, that's like cauliflower is the one exception. So and you can look at, and I'll have this list on my Facebook too of all the ones we talked about. So I don't want you to get bogged down tonight either. Is I want you to get the concept of this. I want you to grasp the 30,000 foot view. You're not going to leave here tonight and know exactly how to cook all these meals and how to eat them all, but you can go home and start digging. We'll go home and we'll start looking up ketogenic meals and you'll dig. Okay? I want you to get some of these key concepts like the insulin, like the ability to fast, the freezer fridge analogy. Those are the concepts I want you to leave here with tonight to understand this. Okay? Yeah. Fats. Now we get into the good stuff, right? So always the distinction when we talk about fats is quality fats. Good quality fats. That needs to be 75% of your caloric intake in a day to be your good kind of fats. So here's the thing that gets missed the most when I work with people. When we talk about fats, they all want to think about meat, right? They want to think about a fatty steak. They want to think about bratwurst. They want to think about those types of things, bacon, those types of things. So it's okay, and we want to have our protein sources be on the fattier side. As long as they're grass-fed critters, that's really, really, really good fat. but we can't have a 14 ounce steak. We're gonna be in gluconeogenesis, we're gonna convert that to sugar. So we can have that nice 6 ounce filet from a grass-fed animal. It's got a ton of good fats in there for us. But in addition to that, we gotta get more things that we add to our plate that has fat on it. And the problem that we have is those things are kind of limited. So some of your good friends are gonna be, we'll talk about here in a second, are gonna be things like olive oil, butter, coconut oil, avocados, those types of things will be added to each meal. So in my mind, what I do is we're gonna always have a protein source for your lunch and your dinner. Deck of cards of protein, whether that's steak, chicken, some salmon, those types of things. And then we're gonna have green leafy stuff to go with it. And we're gonna slather up our green leafy stuff with butter and olive oil. Because you wanna add an additional 2 tablespoons of butter to our of fat, to our meals each time. 1 to 2 tablespoons each time. Okay? So for me, I always joke that my broccoli is a delivery system for my butter. Right? And it tastes so good. So if you get some good Kerrygold butter, some grass-fed butter right down here at Safeway, lather your veggies up with it, have a nice piece of meat, and you're doing good. You're right on track. And then we also want to talk about having at least 1 or 2 snacks a day that have 1 to 2 tablespoons of fat in them as well. Okay?
What'd you just say?
We want to have a couple snacks
Oh.
throughout the day that have 1 to 2 teaspoons of fat. So what are our good fats, right? Outside of meat. So our meat sources are all good fats if they're from grass-fed critters. Bacon's great, steak is great, burgers are great, salmon is great. So all those things, if it's raised sustainably and it's grass-fed, it's great for us. The myth of red meat's bad for you, absolutely not. Red meat that's at Safeway is bad for you because it's grain-fed, it's corn-fed. You want to find grass-fed critters. So the other good fats, I eat at least 1, if not 2 avocados a day. Got to fall in love with your avocados. Super yummy. Health benefits are amazing. All fat, all good monounsaturated fats. Great food. Olives, great fat in olives. Eat a bunch of olives every day. Olive oil is wonderful. Slather that up as well.
Are you doing for the black and green?
Nope, does not. Coconut milk and coconut oil are all really good fats. So you can, when you're cooking with things at higher heats, coconut oil is the winner. Colder things like salads and salad dressings, olive oil. You can't cook at high heats with olive oil, it gets rancid. Kerrygold butter is grass-fed butter. That's just one of the brands that's sold locally. That's grass-fed, free-range cattle that make the butter. And again, I at least have 4 to 5 tablespoons of that every day. So we run through a lot of that Kerrygold butter in our
Where
house.
do you find grass-fed beef?
Yeah, I got a patient that gets them for you. The health food stores all have it. You can go on to wild.com. You can get it ordered direct to your house. And we live in South Dakota, so you ask everybody, ask friends and family who are ranchers, and some people will grow one for you. So we got a patient that will get it for you real cheap.
How many tablespoons of butter did you say a day?
You know, again, for just you,
Because I eat a lot of butter.
for me personally, 3 to 4 or 5. So
Okay.
I don't really keep that tight of track of it.
I eat a lot of salmon. Is there a difference in?
Yeah, so you want to get line caught salmon. That's the smaller ones. The sockeye salmon from Alaska are about the only ones that aren't tainted with mercury. If you get the stuff that's called Atlantic salmon, it's pen raised, and run away from it like the plague. Because they feed it grain, so it's got the wrong fatty acid profile in it, and they feed a lot of their own critters back to it. When the fish die, they grind them and feed it back. And then they give it pellets to make the meat look pink, because it's not pink when it's raised in a pen like that. Wrecks the environment, they get fleas, it's nasty. Google it and see what it looks like.
I eat a wild caught.
There you go. So if you get wild caught Alaskan salmon, sockeye, really good, really good. Last one on here is what we call MCT oil, which is called medium chain triglycerides. So it's essentially like coconut oil, but just distilled a little bit more. Kind of the good stuff is taken out. And what that is just oil. It's odorless and it's tasteless. but you can do a tablespoon of that in the morning, and it will get converted into ketones right away. So it's kind of like a quick little hit, gets your body moving right away towards ketones.
Would you tell us what the C and the T stand for again?
Medium chained triglycerides. So here's the thing we gotta understand, when we talk about a high-fat diet, it is a high-fat diet. It's 75% fat, but what it isn't is what you see up there right now. All of the industrial processed fats are nasty for us. So all the vegetable oils, whether it's safflower, cottonseed, soy, corn, canola, those are in everything. If you buy anything that's processed, any salad dressing, anything in a bag or chips, they're all fried in these types of oils. The other things are trans fats, trans fatty acids, and conventionally raised meats. So anything that's fed grain has all of the same fatty acid profile of this. And what it does, it just gets pro-inflammatory, it causes inflammation in our bodies. If we want to run away from those fats, you can see down here things like Pam and Crisco and Wesson and canola, those are just not good for us. So other sources of fat that also have protein in them, grass-fed beef, chicken thighs, buffalo, wild game meats, so that's a real good one. Organ meats from sustainably raised animals is great, wild caught, sockeye, free-range eggs. So the last conversation we need to talk about a little bit is dairy. So we talked about butter. So butter does not have very much protein in it. So there's a lot of fat, but not much protein.
Question.
Yep.
I've discovered getting something called sweet cream butter, which to me,
You know,
I don't know what's in it.
yeah, anytime it's going to say sweet, I'm not sure, you have to bring it in so I can look at it. I'm not quite sure what that
I
says.
just get it at Safeway called sweet cream.
Yeah,
It's
so
much tastier.
just get Kerrygold. Sounds like there's stuff in
Get
it.
what?
The Kerrygold butter.
Kerrygold?
That's what it'll be in the slides when you get it.
Yeah.
So when we look at dairy, the good thing about dairy is it's got a lot of fat in it. The bad thing is that almost all of our dairy is pasteurized and it's fed grain. So real moderation for me. So a little bit of cheese is okay if you get the harder cheese, full fat cheese. A little bit of cream, a little bit of sour cream. Those are okay. And when I say a little bit, for me it's kind of almost like my cheat days. I do a little bit of that because it still comes with a lot of protein in it. And again, the protein excess gets turned into sugar. So a little bit's okay. In my salads, I do just a little bit of cheese.
Can I ask a question? I found that their research has shown that the cheeses have the estrogen in them.
That's because the cattle that were raised with all the antibiotics, growth hormones, and the xenoestrogens. That's what I'm saying. For me, if you could find sustainably raised cattle that were on grass and non-pasteurized milk, and you could eat the cream, have at it. Everything we get at Safeway is pasteurized. And everything we get at Safeway is fed grain, except for this Kerrygold butter. It's grass-fed. So for me, the other things, other than a little bit of cheese, is real moderation. You definitely don't want to be eating any cottage cheese, no yogurt, no milk. Those are all just high in protein.
How about,
Yep.
how about like rice milk, almond milk?
Yep, they're great alternatives, but we're following a ketogenic diet. There's a lot of sugar in those. Depends on which ones you get.
Well, if you get them sweet.
Yeah, if you get the unsweetened, they're better, but you don't need it for anything. Right? We're not Paleolithical ancestors didn't grind a whole bunch of almonds down and squeeze them and blend them and make milk out of them. Right? Because there's a bunch of protein in it too. So you got to watch the protein amount that's in it and the carbohydrate.
So you can get too much protein
Yep. So that's what we've talked
in
about.
dairy?
Yep. Yep. You drink a big glass of milk, you've got a bunch of protein as well as the xenoestrogens and all the other inflammatory stuff that it has in it.
Is there a certain amount of protein per meal? What was
Yeah,
that?
that's right. Yeah, it's about 12-ish grams per day, especially ladies. Ladies are a little bit lower, 10 to 13 grams. Gentlemen, 14 to 17 grams. But we don't want to have ever more than a deck of carbs of protein. The next thing where we get good fats from is our nuts and seeds. Again, like we just talked about, our ancestors didn't just sit down and eat a whole bag full of almonds, right? They would hunter and gather a handful of almonds. They'd eat those through the course of the day, and they'd store some. They'd eat a handful of almonds, but they wouldn't eat a bag full of almonds. So nuts are great. Just want to get the ones that are full fat. And which ones have the most fat? Macadamia nuts. They are the best nut. The macronutrient profile is about 80% fat in those. Pecans are second best. Almonds are probably third best because there's a lot more protein in almonds than macadamias and pecans. Walnuts are pretty good. There's a whole bunch of different seeds. I didn't list them all, but chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, black currant seeds. There's a lot of different seeds out there as well. They're really good.
Sunflower seeds, do they? have
Average.
that?
Yeah, they're kind of down on the bottom side of things.
When you're
Especially,
talking about pumpkin seed, you're not talking about the processed stuff you buy in the store.
you got it. Yeah, that's the hard part. And that's the problem with most all your sunflower seeds. You gotta get them raw and not cooked, because they cook them in all those cottonseed, linseed, canola oils, and they heat them at high heat, and they cook them in aluminum vats and aluminum vats. So you always want to get your nuts raw and organic. The market's got a bunch of them. Staple Spice has a bunch of them. All of those places do really well. All right, that's the sad stuff. Now we're gonna get to some good stuff, right? Who likes coffee? No? A couple? Most? Okay. So I hate coffee. So I do this, and I just started doing this here about 3 weeks ago, because I don't even like tea. Like, tea doesn't taste good to me. But I started doing this to get more fat into my body, right? So we always talk about how do we deliver more fat into our body of good kinds of fat. So we talked about that fast. So we fasted at 10 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night, really around for the morning. If you want to try something, maybe not tomorrow, some other stuff, but the next day this week, if you want to take an action step, try skipping breakfast and having a bulletproof coffee. There's a bunch of recipes out there, but essentially you're taking some organic coffee, not Folgers. That's organic coffee you bought down at Staple Spice or Main Street Market, one of those places, or Safeway probably has as well. And you want to add to it 1 to 2 tablespoons of grass-fed butter, of the Kerrygold butter, 1 to 2 tablespoons of coconut milk, 1 to 2 tablespoons of MCT oil, and then dump it in the blender. That's the key. So those fats will all emulsify in your coffee. Blend it up. On high, let her whip. When you get out, pour it in your cup. Blend a few drops of stevia. Everybody knows what stevia is? It's a sugar from a plant. You just get little droppers of it down at most stores will have that. And then throw some cinnamon on it, and away you go. It's amazing. Everybody loves it. So if you like lattes that are frothy and kind of creamy mochas, that type of stuff, you'll love it. So what that does for you in the morning, gives your body a whole bunch of fat to start the day with. And away you go. That's how you start your day.
And you're adding this to a cup of coffee.
Coffee or tea. I do it to tea because I don't like coffee. And you can Google bulletproof coffee, and there'll be a zillion recipes pop up for it. The next thing we talk about is...
Can you take all that stuff and blend it, dump it on your oatmeal and drink your coffee black?
Nope. You can dump all the stuff in your bowl minus your oatmeal, and then drink your